Hey guys, this is Laurie Gambos here from Outback Mototech. I'll be doing a lower crash bars engine guards installation on a 2016 Honda Africa Twin CRF1000. You can also use this video as an example for installing our products on an adventure sports or standard 2018-2019. There isn't really a difference. The only thing is that I will explain later for the adventure sports models, the exhaust header will have to be slightly loose in the bolts to give more room to actually gain some more space to have access to the engine mount bolts, but I will explain that later. So I will be doing lower crash bars and engine guards in the same time based on a popular request. I'll be explaining some tips and tricks, and I will be including more details than before. I released a few videos 2 years ago, 3 years ago when we started the Africa Twin products, and our products improved since then and evolved. So it's time to make a new updated video as well. So let's get started. I'm going to be explaining first the recommended tools, and I will walk through the hardware that we supply, and we're going to move on to installing the product and its components. Alright, so the recommended tools for both the crash bars and engine guards installation, and besides tools, I really recommend you to have medium strength thread locking fluid. The brand doesn't matter. Some people call it Loctite. Sockets, I'll use a 10 millimeter, 12 mil, 13, 17, 6 millimeter, also a socket, 6 millimeter Allen, 4 millimeter Allen, a short extension, and then a nice long one. This is about 25 centimeters, roughly 10 inches. This is about 2.5 inches long. That'd be 9 centimeters. Ratchet. I'll be using a miniature version, smaller version ratchet, just because it's smaller and gives me more access to some bolts on the cross brace. And it's got a short corresponding extension, and this also comes with a 10 millimeter socket specifically for this small ratchet and extension. Wrenches, or some people call them spanners. I'll be using 17, 14, but we'll need a pair of 14 millimeter wrenches or spanners. So I have two here, two 14 millimeters, one that's 13 millimeter. Okay, 12 mil. And finally one that's 10 millimeter. Okay, so these are the tools I will be using today to install our product. So these are the hardware that we will supply. This is for the engine guards. This is for the crash bars. Now the only thing I want to mention here, if you are installing our crash bars and engine guards, which is highly likely, do not use the engine through bolts from the crash bars package. Here's my digital caliper. I'm going to measure the crash bars bolt, the engine through bolt length, and that is, yes, it's 110 millimeters. So if you're installing engine guards, don't worry about putting these in because you will have to take it out. They are not long enough to install the engine guards mounting tabs as well. So if you're only installing crash bars, use this because that's what we're going to supply. But if you are installing our engine guards, then go for the longer ones. And the longer ones, I'm measuring now the ones from the engine guards package. They are the 120 millimeter in length. I mean, I can go exactly, but this is 120. There you go. So back to the crash bars hardware package for a second. We have a couple of hex head, 6 millimeter diameter bolts, actually 4 of them, and we have 2 8 millimeter diameter, also hex. And this package, it's actually hex and Torx. Okay, very important is the spacer. This spacer is really important because you will have to put it in between the frame and the crash bars cross brace. I will show that to you as well shortly. Engine guards also have a few 8 millimeter diameter bolt. We have 3 hex heads, 1, 2, 3, and 1 round head. And the round head is really important because we supply 1 round head bolt to be able to give you the opportunity to put the OEM short skid plate back on. So this is really important. I will show that to you. We'll show it to you where to put it. So a couple of long ones, a 6x35-ish hex head. This is for the C clamps, right? The supplied nylock nuts for the through bolts, and this is really cool here. This is a like you can call it a half nut, or yeah, it's a half nut. It's like half the size of a regular nut, and it's going to mount on the frame. And I will explain to you why it's cut in half, but that's the way it's supposed to be, and that's the way it has to be. I also need to mention one important component. This bracket is for the engine guards. It's going to go on the right hand side rear. It's going to slide onto the frame bolts, and this is where the flat nut is going to come handy, which again I will explain. Okay, so one more bracket, and let's get over to the bike now. So here's our Africa Twin. I already stripped it down to get ready for installing our product. On your bike, if it's still in factory condition, there's going to be a small triangular bracket or piece here. Just remove it, but make sure to keep the 2 bolts that go up here. There are 2 bolts. Actually, I have it right here. There will also be a factory nut that will come off here. It's got like this washer integrated in it, so make sure to keep it as well because you're going to put it back here. Okay, so yeah, obviously do make sure that the engine's cold because we'll be working around the exhaust headers and the engine. So make sure the engine's cold enough to work around it. This is really important. There's this engine mount bracket back here attached to the frame. We've had a few customers by accident removing the top bolt here. This is the top front. I'll try to get it on a different angle here. So do not remove the top. You could not anyways because the exhaust header is right in the way, but some people did manage. Okay, so what you're going to remove is the lower one with straight axis to it, and the top one back up there. Okay, the engine is not going to fall out, so go ahead and remove the top and the lower one. Let me try to get it from a different angle from the other side. It is slightly more visible here. So lower one, remove, top remains in. Pull the water hose to the side and you will see the top one back here. So this comes out and this comes out, and we are ready to install our cross brace, which is this piece right here. Okay, I'll show it to you. It's going to go like this. This is the top. This is the top where the cutout is. Okay, so it's going to go on right in there, and this is where we're going to use the supply spacer. Now there's a spacer right behind there. There's a spacer, that's a factory spacer. Make sure that it does not fall out, okay? Make sure it stays in its place back here. If it's moved, you're gonna notice it because you're not gonna be able to put the through bolt in. So yeah, I just want a little trick. And when it's all set, we can start installing the cross brace. Okay, so this is the cross brace, and the top hole is actually the 10 millimeter diameter, so that's where you're going to be putting the corresponding bolt. It's going to go through here. This is a 10 millimeter. So at the bottom is the 8 millimeter, and that's what you're going to put through there. But got to be careful because this is also where the spacer is going to go. All right, so spacer and then the 8 mil diameter engine bolt through goes there. So okay, let's see how it goes. So I'm gently going to slide it in without scratching up the exhaust header, like so. If you want to hang it and deal with the spacer just right after, I would suggest that you start with the top bolt, the 10 millimeter diameter. You will have to push the water hose to the side. Make sure the upper spacer is in its place, the OEM spacer, and just push the bolt through. Move it a little bit to match up the mounting holes on the other side. Sometimes you have to move it a little bit. It's in now. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to put our supplied aluminum spacer at the bottom where the 8 millimeter diameter corresponding hole is. It goes in between the engine mount plate and our cross brace. So I lifted it a tiny bit. I'm gonna try to see through on the side. So I've got the bolt going in gently. I feel that it's gone through the cross braces hole, and it's picking up the spacer. It's gone through the spacer as well. So you have to wiggle or rattle just a bit or move it, and you will see that it's actually going to start running through the frame. So now mine's gone through the frame. I'll grab the camera and show you what it looks like. Okay, so it's here, and I can easily just push it through. No problem, like that. That's it. It's not all the way in. This is pretty much all the way through. You can see the little spacer here. There's a little spacer, our supplied spacer. And on the other side, it's a little bit dark, but the gray, silver part is going to provide a good contrast. So I'm going to go, and you will see, oh, there it is. It's just come through. So here I do have to mention a few things. When you're installing our crash bars on the Adventure Sports, on the Adventure Sports you will have to remove the OEM upper crash bars, and the OEM crash bars rely on. They sit on a lower mounting tab. A lower mounting tab, I don't have it on this bike because it's a standard one, but a lower mounting tab is in the way. Sorry, the exhaust header is in the way of it. So in order to remove the OEM bracket on an adventure sports, you're gonna have to remove 4 bolts from 2 bolts from each header. So 1 and 2, and 1 and 2 on the other side. 1 and 2. Okay, so this will flex enough so you can go at the bracket and remove it. You're not going to have to remove the exhaust, the complete exhaust header. Just loosen up those remove the nuts, and it will actually move and flex enough. Cross brace is installed here. We've got the left side crash bar here in my hand. You're gonna have to feed the rear end through here. All right, eventually, but I would start with tacking the front end here, mate them up, and then use the supplied 6mm bolts, put them through, and then deal with the rear end. Okay, so I'm going to show you how. So just grab 2 of these hex bolts, remove, if it's not on for you in the package, I'll just remove the washer and the nylock nuts. Put them to the side here, not too far, just keep it handy. So now I only have the 2 hex bolts in my head. Gonna feed the rear end through behind the frame, and the front is gonna match up here, the 2 brackets, and push through 1 bolt and then the second one. So it's in place. Don't let it go because it actually could drop. Hold against the hex head with your finger, put on the washer, and then hand thread the locking nut. Do the same on the top. So bolt goes through, washer on the other side, and then the nylock nut. So this is actually going to keep it in place. Everything is nice and loose, which is what we want because we want loose fitting for easier installation. So this is in, you can let it go, it's not going to drop. It's going to hang, but it's not going to drop. And then we can move to the bracket at the rear end. So now I've got this large clamp / bracket in my hand, which is going to go right up here. Make sure to put the longer side's going to go on the rear end. Short obviously is in the front. So it's actually going to go in like that. First, then I'm going to grab the 2 8mm diameter hex bolts. Grab them from the package and apply some thread locking fluid. Really not much, just a dab. If you put a little too much on by accident, just spread it like that. Okay, so now we're ready to install the bracket. Longer side on the rear. You don't really need tools for this. Just use your hand. 1 or 2 turns, you know, the thread's engaged. You might need to hold up the crash bar with one hand or your elbow. I'm going to line up the front holes, mounting holes, and also going to drop it in with my hand. If you have to rattle or move it around a bit to find the thread on the other side, and do so. And just apply a few turns like so. So now I'm going to mount the right side crash bar. I'm going to start with the rear here. It's just slightly trickier. Grab the two 10mm diameter bolts that you removed from back here, 1 and 2. Grab those, put them in. Through those holes, like so. Obviously not this one. There's no bolt going here. It's actually, the bolt is right on here on the frame, so we're gonna use that one. So leave this empty. Put the bolts through here. It's a bit trickier because you're gonna have to put the spacers on through the other end, the back end, and you will have to keep them in place. And you will keep them in place with your hand initially, and then they will sit against the frame mounted tabs. Okay, so let's do this. I've got the spacers right back there. I'm keeping it in place with my fingers. And I'll go ahead and drop this in slightly. Hold it with your finger as long as it's possible. And then it's gonna sit against the frame mounted tabs and drop it in. In case you lose the spacer, don't panic. But just go gently at it. Move the bolt if necessary until it lines up with the corresponding place. You're gonna have to reach behind, wiggle it in. Still have the spacers. Okay, so I am good to go here. I'm gonna keep this with one hand, the preferably right hand, and hand thread. And it's important that you hand thread it because you want to feel when it's caught the thread. If it's not catching, just wiggle, rattle just a bit. The top one actually feels good. It's going in. And the bottom. So when it's engaged, it's gonna keep it in place slightly, but don't drop it yet. We have to put on the small, the nut with the integrated washer. Also hand thread it. That's the easier part. Like so. Okay, so now we can tack the front end, grab the two 6mm diameter hex head bolts, and insert them through here. 1, and then 2. Again, if it's a little tight for some reason, just try to rattle or wiggle the crash bar a bit, and it will give you enough clearance to push the bolt through. And on the other side, spacer, nylock nut. No tools necessary at this point here. And at the bottom, the same. And the nylock nut. Oops, little thing. It's trying to get away from me. All right, so that's about it. So we can now go ahead and finish the cross braces installation. Here you're looking at the top bolt, the top through bolt, which is 10mm in diameter. And first, put on the washer. And you got that part. This is actually, it moves in and out fairly easily, so if you want, keep a finger or your hand on the other side when you're threading on the nylock nut, so you don't push it in. See, I'm pushing it in now. What I will have to do is I will have to reach back behind and don't let it slide or don't let it turn. So it's on. Good, and move down to the lower one. So this is the 8mm. I'll repeat pretty much the same thing. I'm gonna reach behind to support that bolt. And here I'm gonna put on the 8mm washer. Oh, there you go. And then thread on the 8mm nylock nut, like so. Just to go through some of the final, really just the final step is tightening the bolts and nuts. So what you're gonna do, you can start with either part, just don't fully tighten. Okay, so what you're gonna do is, say you come up here. I will use the small size ratchet and the extension and the 10mm socket. On the other side, on here, you can use a 10mm wrench or spanner. Okay, both sides, and then here you come back, 12mm socket, 12mm wrench or spanner here. But go easy at this, okay, because you don't want to strip the thread in here. Just be really careful. Go as far as you can with your finger first, and again, it could put some the crash bar could put some pressure on these bolts, which could end up in cross-threaded bolts and thread. So I would suggest, if you don't have somebody hold this, then try to keep it up with your elbow or one hand, and the other hand just thread it in. Okay, so back on the other side, what I already clarified that here, 10mm socket and 10mm wrench back here. If your 10mm socket or the ratchet too big, I suggest you use the small one that I will be using to gain some more room. Not going to be bashing it against the paint. Back here, I'll be using a 10mm socket to tighten this, both rear and front. And that's about it. So yeah, go around with the tools I've suggested. Tighten, go around and just tighten it step by step. Don't go full tighten and then the next one full tighten. Go tighten it, not fully, and do all of it, and then start all over again, and you can do the final torquing. Okay, so let's do that. So here you go. This is the final result. I've completed the installation of the lower crash bars. Once again, sorry about the noise in the background. I can't really filter it out. We are working. Alrighty. So yeah, this is it for now, for this one. And if you have engine guards to install, then stay with me. So this is the engine guards part installation of the combo package. So this is the left side engine guard I'm gonna install first for a couple of reasons, which I will explain. So I've got this part in my hand. It's a little beat up from the drop testing. And 2 M8 bolts. All right, one is the round head, button head. And then we have the other one, which is a hex. Make sure to apply medium strength thread locking fluid. So we're using this mounting hole and this one up here. Okay, so here I'm gonna put the round head, this, because this will allow you to put your short OEM skid plate back on, and the hex one can go back here. Okay, hold it with one hand and then start with either of the bolts. I'm going to start with the rear one back here. Hand thread it. This is pretty simple. And then the round head. Make sure it lines up and then just hand thread it. For this later on, you're going to be using a 5mm Allen and then a 10mm socket at the back. So this is the slightly tricky part. So we don't have a lot of space, but essentially what you will have to do is you're going to have to grab the through bolts. This is the M10 by 120, which will go up top, and then the M8 by 120, which will go down low here. But don't forget, we have the spacer, because it fell out. The spacer will go back in here, just as with the crash bars installation. See, I'm putting it back there, and it's going to fall out. Don't worry about it, put it back in. But the trick here is that you're going to have to keep this whole structure upright until the mounting holes line up, and then push the long bolts through. Okay, so I'm keeping it up with one hand, otherwise it drops. It's going to be too heavy. So I'm going to place the camera on the stand, and I will show you how I do it. So it's very important that you leave the crash bars really loose. Okay, look at that. Mine's really loose. It rattles, but all the bolts are actually engaged. They all threaded in. It's just 1 or 2 turns, but it's in. So the entire structure is loose, and this will give you a much easier time installing the engine guard. So now I'm going to go ahead and put my camera on a stand, and I'll show you how I do it with 2 free hands. So I will actually start with the top bolt, so I don't have to deal with the spacer falling out, and it's just going to make it easier. I'm going to go ahead and start with the top. The top, though, you really have to pull the radiator hose aside this time, either to the right or to the left. Pull it to the side, even press on it. Don't worry about it too much because it flexes. Okay? So I'm gonna push it through first the engine guard's hole, and then I'm gonna lift up the crash bar and wiggle it until it goes through, lift it up a bit and back, and it's actually going through now. Let me take it off. Let me take it off the stand, show you what I mean. It's through at least halfway. You can see it, and I just need to press on it. And if it's not going through all the way for you, then it means the crash bar is still putting pressure on the through bolt, the upper through bolt. That means you just have to lift it up a bit with the other hand and press with the right hand or whichever is free for you and closer to this. Okay, so keep watching. So that's it. My top through bolt is through fully. You can see there. Let's find a good angle to show you. Where are you? Yeah, right there. Mine's all the way through. Right there. Okay, so now we can deal with the bottom one. It should be a bit easier. So see, it's right now, it's actually not lined up. But don't worry, there's nothing wrong with it. That means we just have to lift the crash bar or just the cross brace, and it will move enough. See, it's already pretty good. Don't forget though, we got to put the spacer in between the frame and voila, and then press the bolt through. Okay, I'm going to put the camera on the stand and follow through. Spacer, bolt. If it's not going through yet, just pull out the spacer, put it to the side, and then make sure the bolt goes through at least the first hole or two, which means it's the engine guard and a cross brace. I'm going to pull it back a bit so I will have space to put the spacer in, like so. Put it through. Good. And almost there, and it's good. I can push it through now. Might need to lift it up a bit. Wiggle, rattle, press like so, and a bit more. A bit more should be coming through on the other end very soon. Lift, rattle, move, push. Oh, it's almost through. I have the spacer in. So I've come over on the other side, and actually the bolt is here. Its tip is a bit out now, you can see, which is good enough for us. Well, we can push it more because there's room for it. Let me find the bolt for you. Yeah, right there. So we can still push on it a bit. And we'll have to. There's still room. But, the tip's out. I'm going to use this little hammer. And actually I'm only going to use the handle to press on it. I'm not going to hit or tap. Just press. And that's it. So my finger wasn't strong enough to press on it anymore, so I just grabbed the hammer and used its handle, and voila, that bolt is completely through. So is the upper one. Okay, let's move on to the next step. So this is the step that actually a few people asked us to explain more thoroughly in more details. So there it is. I'm pointing the camera at this part because this is where we're going to squeeze in our rear mounting tab to, like this part. We're going to place it on the frame, right in between here and right down here, like so. But the tricky part is down underneath. So let me show you what it looks like down there and what we're going to have to do. So we're down here under the bike. And there are two bolts that go through the frame. 1 and 2. They're loose now. I've loosened it. There's no need to remove these bolts. We don't want to remove them actually. The exhaust is in the way and it's not necessary to move. That's why we have the notches, the cutouts on the bottom. So all you got to do is make sure they are loose. Slide them over. All right, And for this, you will have to use the 14 millimeter wrenches, but 2 of them. So this is where the 2 14 millimeter wrenches come handy. Gonna put them on. So they're on. So now they're obviously loose here. I'm not gonna have to do this part, but you will have to loosen it up, and that's with 14 millimeter spanners or wrenches. Leave them loose, and actually the one on the rear, leave the nut on. You don't need to take it off. Okay, it's gonna slide in and out a bit, but don't take the nut off. It's not necessary. But the front, you will have to take off the nut. And this is where this half nut is gonna come handy, because we're gonna be losing some thread here. And if you put a standard nut back in, that's only gonna occupy about half of a standard nut, which is not good for us. Okay, so press these out as far as you can. They're not gonna fall out, don't you worry. Now grab the rear bracket and gently slide it through back here until it actually sits on the 2 bolts, like so. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like. And then press this one, the front one, back in. There's some thread. And that's exactly the width of our flat nut. Now I suggest that you use some thread locker, a thread locking fluid, Loctite, before you put it on. And then the rear one, you don't have to do anything because you have the regular nut on, and it's fine. It's going to be long enough. Okay, so I'm going to place the flat nut on, and I'll show you what it looks like. Alrighty. So I've installed the flat nut, hand tighten it, hand tighten this one, and hand tighten the back one, and it's looking good. I suggest you leave it loose. Like I can still move this tab a bit. I can move it. I can rattle it a bit, which is really important because when you start installing the right side engine guard, it's best that you have it loose, so you're going to have an easier time lining up the mounting holes up top, which I will show you soon. Really important. So to tighten this, you will be using 2 14 millimeter wrenches. All right. So there you go. But the flat nut actually requires a size 17 millimeter wrench, and I have it in my hand here, and that's what's going to go up here when it's time to tighten it at the end. And of course, then you will on the other side still use the 14 millimeter. Okay, so that's what it looks like. That's what you will do right at the end. But for now, we're okay to leave this tab loose enough, and now we can install the right side engine guard. So this is the right side engine guard. This is the manual one. It goes straight and then one bend. The DCT is different. It's got 2 bends. It goes much deeper to protect the DCT component here. So what you will have to do now, before you start mounting the right side engine guard, the bolts do stick out quite a bit. Right, so if you think it's too much or it's giving you a hard time because you have a hard time mounting the front tab, just push this bolt back a bit. Just back it up a bit, not much. As long as you have the tip sticking out a tiny bit, just a few millimeters, that's good enough. I'm gonna leave it like this for now, the top one as well, and then we'll see how it goes. And if it's giving me a hard time, I'm just gonna back it up a bit. Okay, so let's mount now the right side front tabs first. All right, so here we go. Be careful not to scratch up the header and the engine. either. So if you have to press on the hose, just do so. It flexes enough. And I think I'm gonna be okay with the bolts sticking out. Should be okay. Back here, watch the rear end. You will have to hold this with one hand and lift it over the rear brake, the foot pedal, and drop it in gently. Make sure this also engages up top, the C-clamp, and then it's in place for now. It's looking good. I'm gonna go back and focus on placing the front tab on the corresponding bolts. Yeah, it was pretty easy. I managed to put the front tab on to engage without pushing the bolts back. There's one back there. We're good back there. We're good down here. Let me show you it from the front. So there you go, we're good. I can still press on it if I have to, but the bolt's gonna suck it in. And the top as well. There you go. Okay, so actually if you want, you can go ahead and put the washer and the locking nut. Don't forget the top is M10 and down here is the M8. Same deal. Now you have a little less space because the engine guards tubing is occupying a big chunk of space now here behind the header. I'm holding the camera with one hand. I'll attempt to thread on this bolt without shaking the camera too much. Sorry about that. And that's it. Now I'm gonna put the camera down because the top one I know is a bit harder. There isn't much room because there's also now the engine guard tubing, and now we have the radiator hose, but you will have to reach in there and repeat the same thing I just did down below. So there's the spacer, there's the washer, and then there is the nut, and the lower one down here as well. Do a little focusing. There you go. Don't worry about the gap here. When you start tightening the bolt, it's actually going to suck it in. See, the spacer is still there. It's really good. The spacer back there is good. It's there. And this is the tab that we put on the frame. If everything is left loose, then you don't have to worry about too much. Leave the C-clamp installation for the last step, and then carry on with this. If you have to press up on this a bit to line up the mounting holes up top, don't be shy. There's lots of room. Because right now they're actually not that close. You might have to pull down on it a bit. It's going to flex enough, but we left this one loose, so you can press upon it to match the corresponding holes. All right, so let's do this. The frame mounted tab and the engine guards tab lined up. The holes are lined up, and it's so simple. You really just have to press upon, or just move the frame mounted tab a bit, bring it up, or push it down. You can play with it, and we still have the tab properly engaged here. Right, so the lines are good, the holes are good, they're lined up. I've got my 2 M8 bolts ready. They have the locking fluid, and I'm just gonna hand thread them in. Good. They're actually moving together now, so that means the bolts engaged. They went through the thread. It's threaded in, still loose, so we're looking good here. It means now we can move on to installing the C-clamp This is really good here. It's also engaged, which we established a few minutes back. And it's, again, actually not at all difficult. You will have to grab your 6mm diameter bolts and the nylock nuts. Okay, remove the locks, remove the locking nut, and keep the nuts handy. Gonna put the C-clamp on the other side. Press one bolt through. Now at this point you can either press one through and then thread on the locking nut, just one turn, and then you can do the second one back here, or whichever sequence you prefer. And hand thread, no tool at this point necessary. All right, here we go. C-clamp installation, just like on the right side. Have your M6 by 35mm long hex head bolts ready, and the two locking nuts. So I will just keep one bolt and one nut in my hand for now. Mount this on the other side, press the bolt through, keep it in place like so, grab the locking nut and thread it on like so. Okay, one, and then the other side, press the bolt through, and then the locking nut. And that's pretty much it. So actually at this point, I'm gonna say that we are ready to tighten all the bolts and nuts. Use all the recommended tools. I walked you through all the tools that we're gonna be using, so use those tools to tighten, torque them down gently, step by step. When you're done, go out for a ride. Go for a good rip, 100 kilometers, 150, or even 100 miles. When you go back home, double check again all the bolts and nuts that nothing's got loosened or anything. So yeah, follow these steps to a successful installation. If you still have any questions, call us or email, even leave us a comment here, and I hope you're going to find this updated installation manual useful, and I appreciate you watching the video. Thank you so much, and have a good day and enjoy your ride.